Many years ago, the galaxy watched as Earth slowly died. The skies turned black with smoke. The oceans boiled. Cities turned to dust. Humans fought each other for power, money, and control. War after war, they burned their own planet. From space, Earth looked like a dying fire. The alien races laughed. "They are weak," said the tall, silver-skinned Zilari. "They will destroy themselves," said the insect-like Drakari. "Let them vanish. We don't need them," said the cold, robotic Varn. And so, the galaxy moved on. The last human signals went silent. No ships came from Earth. No colonies replied. It was over. Or so they thought. But deep under the dead Earth, in the dark places no one looked, some humans were still alive. They lived in the shadows. They built underground cities powered by old machines. They studied the stars and remembered everything the aliens did. They remembered how their people were laughed at, ignored, and forgotten. They remembered the pain. These humans were not the same as before. They were smarter. They were stronger. And they were angry. For 200 years, they trained. They learned alien languages, stole alien tech from old battles, and turned it into something new. Better, faster, more deadly. They called themselves the second breed. And they had one mission: never be weak again. In the darkness, their machines hummed. In silence, their ships were built. And one day, the Earth opened. A large mountain split in half. Rocks tumbled down. From inside the crack, something rose. It wasn't just a spaceship. It was a shadow, sharp and silent, like a ghost of steel. Smooth, black, and silent as death. It was humanity's first warship in 200 years. It moved without a sound. No bright lights. No signals. Just one quiet message sent into the stars. We are not dead. Far away, in alien space, the old races lived in peace. They believed the galaxy belonged to them now. They had no reason to fear, no reason to remember Earth. But when the human ship passed through the edge of a neutral zone, everything changed. A Zilari patrol ship picked up a strange signal. "Unknown object detected," the officer said. "Send a message," the captain ordered. No reply. They tried again. Still no reply. Then, silence. The patrol ship disappeared. One day later, a second ship was sent. Bigger, armed, ready to fight. But when they found the human ship, it was already too late. The alien commander screamed into the comms, "We don't know who they are. Their weapons, too fast. Our shields, gone. The message ended there. Another ship lost. The galaxy began to whisper. In the Great Council of the Varn, leaders met in fear. "We don't understand," one said. "No race builds ships like that," said another. "What species are they?" An old Drakari general stared at the reports. His eyes widened. His voice shook. "I know that design," he said. "That symbol. I've seen it before. A long, long time ago." He pressed a button, and an ancient photo appeared. A flag from Earth, the symbol of humans. The room went silent. "That's impossible," one said. "They're extinct," said another. The Drakari general looked at them and whispered, "They're back." The message from the human ship echoed across the stars. "We remember everything. We are coming." It was short, clear, and cold. No one had heard a human voice in over 200 years. Some didn't believe it. Others felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. Fear. Across the galaxy, governments held emergency meetings. Alien leaders watched the recordings again and again. The ship was real. The message was real. But how? Where had the humans been all this time? On the trade station of Varun 6, merchants whispered among themselves. Pilots refused to take routes near old Earth space. A few brave explorers tried to track the human ship, but none returned. Their signals just stopped. In the halls of the High Council, a decision was made. Find out who these people really are. So, they sent a scout ship. It was small and fast, built for watching, not fighting. Inside, the crew of 4 Zilari officers studied old human history, photos, languages, culture, trying to learn about the race they once laughed at. They even read the final reports from Earth: wars, fires, silence. "We destroyed themselves," one of them said with a grin. But the smile faded as their ship picked up something strange. "Unusual reading ahead," said the pilot. "Energy signature unknown." "Is it the same ship?" the captain asked. The screen showed a shadow in space. The human ship was there, floating calmly near a quiet asteroid field. It didn't move. It didn't flash any lights. It simply waited. The scout ship slowed down and sent a message. "Unidentified ship, please respond." Nothing. They sent another message. Still nothing. Then, something unexpected happened. The lights inside the alien ship began to flicker. The captain frowned. "What's going on?" The crew tried to fix it, but their systems weren't broken. The human ship was doing something. Somehow, it was touching their ship's systems, without entering, without speaking, without showing any weapons. Then the screen turned black. A moment later, it turned on again. A face appeared. It was human. Skin pale, eyes glowing with something not natural. The face didn't move. It just stared. And then it spoke. "Your world watched as we fell. You forgot us. But we did not forget you." The screen went dark again. The scout ship turned around fast. No one spoke for the entire return flight. The message had been received, and it was clear. The humans didn't want help. They didn't want peace. They didn't want anything from the galaxy. They wanted to be remembered. Back in the council, the alien leaders listened to the recording in silence. The humans were not sending armies. They were not asking for land. They were not demanding anything. They were simply present, and they had changed. A Varn scientist stood up and spoke quietly. "This is not the same species we knew. They have grown. Their machines, their mind, their language. Everything is different now. But they still look like us," a Drakari said. The scientist shook his head. "No, they only appear the same." The room went quiet again. "Then what do they want?" someone asked. No one answered. Meanwhile, on a distant world, a young alien child watched the message on a news screen. "Who are they, father?" the child asked. The father, a trader who once visited Earth in his youth, looked at the screen. "They are humans," he said. "Long ago, we laughed at them. Then we forgot them. Now." He stopped. The screen flashed again. The human face appeared once more. This time, it said something new. "We will not ask twice." And then the stars went quiet again. The galaxy had always been at peace, or so it seemed. But after the message from the human ship, an uneasy silence spread across every corner of space. No one knew what to do next. No one knew what the humans wanted, or what they were capable of. The unknown was always more terrifying than the known. Weeks passed, and nothing happened. The galaxy waited, but the feeling of dread grew with every passing day. The first signs of trouble didn't come from the human ship. Instead, it came from the colonies. Far-flung worlds, once thought to be safe and forgotten, were now facing strange disturbances. Ships were found drifting, their crews gone. Communications were scrambled. Technology malfunctioned. Every system was disrupted, as though something, was testing them. On the moon of Loria 7, the workers reported strange signals from the dark side. At first, they thought it was a malfunction in their systems, but soon it became clear that something was moving in the shadows. They called for help, but the message was never received. In a nearby system, a fleet of ships sent to investigate a mining station near the edge of the galaxy suddenly lost contact. It wasn't until the investigation team arrived that they found something that made their blood run cold. The entire station was abandoned, but it was still running. The lights flickered in the hallways, and the machines hummed quietly. But there were no signs of life, except for one thing. The walls were covered in a strange, unfamiliar script. It looked like symbols, but they were not like anything anyone had ever seen before. The entire crew stared at it in confusion. What did it mean? Who had written it? The answer came a week later, when a fleet of ships, human ships, appeared in the same sector. The ships didn't attack. They didn't make any demands. They simply hovered in space, watching. No messages were sent. No words were spoken. But every moment the humans spent near the station made the alien forces grow more uneasy. Some believed it was a warning, a test. Others thought the humans were playing a game. But one thing was clear. The humans were not like any other race they had encountered. They were different. They had a power that could not be understood. In the council chambers, the leaders from various races gathered again. They had never seen the galaxy so tense, so uncertain. "We need to know what they want," the Zilari captain said, her voice low. "If they wanted to attack, they would have done it already. But we can't let our guard down." The Drakari general nodded. Their message said they remember. But what does that mean? What are they planning? The room fell silent. Finally, the oldest of the Varn council members spoke. His voice was quiet but filled with authority. "We are forgetting something important. They are not just angry. They are not here to destroy. They are here to be remembered." He looked around the room. "We abandoned them. We laughed at them. And now they have returned. Not to fight, not to conquer, but to remind us of our mistake. Are you suggesting we simply apologize?" The Drakari scoffed. The Varn shook his head. "No, they don't want our apologies. They don't need anything from us. But we have forgotten them. And they have not forgotten us." The council was silent, contemplating the meaning of those words. Meanwhile, on the human ship, the crew worked in perfect harmony. They had no grand plans, no speeches. Their mission was simple: to be seen, to make their presence known. They moved with purpose but did not attack. They did not try to take what wasn't theirs. They only observed. They watched. In their minds, there was a quiet promise. Never again would they be forgotten. They knew they could destroy the alien forces if they wanted to. Their technology had evolved far beyond the simple tools of the past. But destruction was not their goal. They had lived through the darkness. They had endured. Now, they only wanted one thing: recognition, a place in the stars that had once abandoned them. Back on the distant worlds, whispers spread. What were the humans doing? Were they preparing for war? Were they coming to claim their place among the stars once again? The galaxy was filled with questions, but there were no answers. No one knew what the humans were thinking. And yet, in the deepest corners of space, the shadow of their presence grew. Every quiet moment, every silent ship, every unspoken word reminded the galaxy of one thing: humanity was not gone. The ships waited in the darkness, not rushing, not forcing their way into the galaxy's future. They simply waited, watching the stars, remembering the time when they too had once been a part of the greater whole. In the silence of space, one thing was certain: the humans had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy had never felt so unsettled. Weeks passed, and still, the human ships did not leave. They remained at the edge of known space, silently observing the stars and the alien races that populated them. It was as if they were waiting for something, waiting for the galaxy to acknowledge their presence. The alien leaders grew anxious. Some insisted that the humans should be approached, that they needed to be understood, while others argued that they should be treated as a threat and kept at a distance. But one thing was clear: the humans were not acting like other races. They didn't make demands. They didn't threaten. They simply waited. But the waiting began to make people nervous. And soon, the whispers turned into discussions. On the trading planet of Sori 9, merchants began to gather. Ships still traveled to the outer worlds, but those who had once been eager to sell their wares now hesitated. Some stopped making their way to the human-occupied territories entirely. Others began to speak of the humans in hushed tones, as if mentioning them aloud might bring bad luck. In quiet corners of the galaxy, the older races, those who remembered Earth, shared their stories. The younger races were curious, eager to understand what had happened to the humans. The stories were old, nearly forgotten. But now, as the humans watched from afar, they felt different. One old merchant told a group of young traders, "Long ago, we looked at Earth and saw only destruction. We thought they were weak. They couldn't even take care of their own planet. We laughed at them, but we didn't know how far they had gone. They were forgotten by everyone. Yet now, they'd returned, and we're the ones who will have to face the truth." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the human ships continued their slow, deliberate movement. They didn't engage in any open battles, didn't chase after alien forces, didn't attack any of the trading routes. They simply followed the edges of space, allowing their presence to be known. And with every day that passed, the tension in the galaxy grew. On one of the outermost moons, a small crew of Zilari officers gathered to discuss the situation. They knew something had to be done. They couldn't just wait forever. Someone had to take action before the fear turned into panic. "We should send a delegation," one of the officers suggested, looking around the table. "We can make contact with them, learn what they want." Another officer shook their head. "They have not attacked. They have made no threats. They simply watch. Why do you think they're here?" The first officer leaned forward, his voice lowering. "That's exactly what I'm afraid of. They don't ask for anything. They don't demand anything. But if we leave them alone, if we ignore them, what happens then? We can't just let them linger out there." The group fell silent. No one had an answer. Meanwhile, in the heart of the galaxy, the Council held another emergency meeting. It had been weeks since the human ships first arrived, and every leader felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them. No one could make sense of the situation. "We cannot ignore this any longer," the leader of the Varn Council declared, his voice sharp and decisive. "The humans are here, and we must understand why." There was a pause as the other leaders absorbed his words. For the first time, the thought was put out there. They could not pretend that the humans were simply a passing curiosity. They were different. They were powerful in ways that no one understood. They had the potential to change everything. One of the Drakari generals stood. "We know how they came. We know what they've done in the past. But we don't know who they are now. They have not spoken a single word of violence. What if we're overreacting? What if they are not a threat at all?" The room went silent. The idea had never been considered before. Could it be possible that the humans were not here to fight, but to simply be seen? "No," another leader said, standing up with determination. "We must take control of this situation. If we allow them to continue without knowing their purpose, we risk the future of the galaxy." But as the debate continued, there was a quiet truth that everyone was beginning to feel deep inside. The humans were not afraid. They were not rushing to take over. They were not asking for anything at all. They were just waiting. Far from the council chambers, on a remote asteroid, one of the human ships remained hidden. On board, the crew of the second breed worked in harmony, their eyes always on the stars. They didn't need to communicate. They didn't need to speak about what they were doing. They were focused on one thing: ensuring that when the time came, the galaxy would know their name. One member of the crew, a young woman who had never seen Earth's surface, stood at the observation window. She gazed at the distant lights, at the stars so far away from her home. She had heard the stories of how humans had once been defeated, how they had fallen into the darkness. But she knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. They had never truly fallen. They had waited, and now they were stronger than ever. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her ancestors' history. She had been raised with their stories, their struggles, their victories. But now she wasn't fighting for power. She wasn't fighting for revenge. She was fighting for something much simpler: to be remembered. The human ship moved on, silent and steady. They didn't need to conquer. They didn't need to control. All they needed was to show the galaxy that they had survived. And that, in itself, was their victory. The days turned into weeks, and still, the humans did not leave. Their ships remained at the edge of the known galaxy, watching, waiting. The alien races, once so certain of their control, now found themselves unsure of what to do. The fear was not of violence, but of something far more unsettling: the possibility that the humans had no need to fight at all. In the heart of the galaxy, the leaders gathered again, their minds heavy with questions. They had sent scouts, attempted to communicate, but the humans were not reacting the way they expected. The messages were unanswered, their ships unmoving. No one had any idea what the humans wanted. "What if they are waiting for us to make the first move?" asked the Varn representative, her voice cautious. A Zilari leader shook his head. "No, they are not like the other species. They don't act out of fear or greed. They only watch, they wait." But for what? The room fell into silence as each leader pondered the mystery. A Drakari general, known for his wisdom, finally spoke up. "Perhaps they are not the ones who need to make a move. Perhaps it is us who have forgotten what they stand for." There was a pause before a soft voice spoke from the corner of the room. It was a young Drakari officer, one who had recently learned the ancient history of Earth. She stood and addressed the council, her voice clear yet filled with respect. The humans once ruled this planet. They built great cities, created advanced technologies, and overcame many challenges. But they were abandoned, forgotten. Now, they are not asking for revenge. They are not asking for anything at all. They are simply here, waiting for us to remember them. The room grew even quieter, and for the first time in many cycles, the galaxy's leaders found themselves in agreement. The humans were not here to conquer or destroy. They were here to be acknowledged, to be seen once again. On a distant world, far beyond the council chambers, the human fleet sat quietly. The ships hovered in the darkness of space, their lights dimmed as if they were shadows. Inside, the crew worked, but not on weapons or strategies. Instead, they focused on communication, on reaching out to the galaxy in subtle ways. They didn't need to fight. They didn't need to force their presence upon anyone. They only needed to be recognized. One of the crew members, a young man, sat at a console, studying the stars. He had heard the stories of how Earth had fallen, of how their ancestors had fought among themselves, tearing their world apart. He had never seen the planet, but he knew its history well. The humans had endured through the hardest of times. And now, their mission was simple: to show the galaxy that they were still here. He closed his eyes for a moment, recalling the ancient stories his ancestors had passed down. The tales of battles, struggles, and triumphs. But those stories were no longer the goal. Now it was about survival. It was about showing the universe that humanity could endure, that they could rise again even after being forgotten. A soft beep interrupted his thoughts. He looked up at the screen, where a message from the command center flashed. It was a request for communication. For the first time, one of the alien races had reached out. The young man's fingers hovered over the controls. He knew this moment had been coming. The time had come to respond. He pressed the button, and a face appeared on the screen. It was a Zilari leader, her expression solemn but respectful. "We've been observing your ships for some time now," she said. "We do not understand your purpose here. Why have you come?" The young man took a deep breath, thinking carefully about his response. He could feel the weight of his ancestors' hopes resting on his shoulders. This was more than just a message. It was a chance for the humans to show who they were. "We came," he said slowly, "to remind you. We are not gone. We have not been forgotten. And we will not be erased." The Zilari leader's eyes widened. For the first time, there was a flicker of understanding. "You are human." "Yes," the young man answered, his voice steady. "We are the ones you thought had disappeared, the ones you forgot. But we remember. And now we ask only to be seen." The message ended, and the crew member sat back in his chair. He didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time, he felt a sense of hope. The galaxy was starting to see them again. Slowly, but surely, the humans were being remembered. Back in the council chambers, the reaction was mixed. Some of the leaders felt a deep sense of unease. They had never expected the humans to be so direct, so unyielding in their quiet strength. Others felt a sense of awe. The humans were not asking for anything more than acknowledgement, something that was so simple and yet so powerful. "We cannot ignore them any longer," said the Varn representative. "They have made it clear that they do not seek conflict, but they also do not seek to be forgotten again." "But how do we respond?" asked a Drakari leader. "They have shown no aggression. They are not demanding anything. How do we answer a people who simply want to be remembered?" The council members looked around at each other. The truth was undeniable. The humans were not like any race they had encountered before. They were not driven by conquest. They were driven by something deeper, something more fundamental. The need to be acknowledged, to exist, and to be part of the galaxy once again. "We must find a way to meet them," the Drakari general said. "Not with weapons, not with fear, but with understanding." And so, for the first time in many cycles, the leaders of the galaxy began to discuss peace, not in the way they had always known it, with treaties and negotiations, but in a way that was far more profound, through recognition and respect. Far away, the human ships continued to watch. They had made their presence known. Now, they waited for the galaxy to choose what came next, but there was no rush. Time had taught them patience. All they needed now was for the universe to see them, not as a threat, but as a reminder that humanity had survived. The galaxy had never been so quiet. For weeks, there had been no major movements, no sudden shifts in power. The human ships remained at the edges of space, still and waiting, their presence like a distant echo. No one knew what to do. The alien leaders, once so certain of their authority, now found themselves questioning everything. Across the galaxy, small pockets of unrest began to form. The races who had once looked down on humanity whispered among themselves. Some called it foolish to entertain the humans' request for recognition, while others felt the growing tension of the unknown. What did it mean for the galaxy if the humans truly did not seek to conquer or fight, but simply wanted acknowledgement? The more the galaxy resisted the truth, the stronger it became. The quiet persistence of humanity in the face of uncertainty began to wear down the walls of fear and distrust that had been built over countless cycles. The meeting of the council was scheduled, but no one knew what to expect. The previous sessions had been filled with doubt, but this one was different. It was as though everyone in the room had been waiting for something to finally shift. There was a heavy weight in the air, a sense that this would be a turning point. The leaders gathered, their faces etched with years of experience, but all of them now aware that something profound had changed. The Varn representative spoke first, her voice steady, but filled with something new. "It has been weeks since the humans made their request. They have not attacked. They have not threatened us. They have only asked to be remembered, but we have done nothing in return. What do we do now?" A pause filled the room as the others pondered her words. The silence was thick, a reflection of the collective uncertainty. Finally, one of the Drakari council members spoke, his tone measured. "We cannot keep pretending they are not here. We've ignored them long enough. They do not seek war. They do not seek to control us. But they will not simply vanish. It's time to stop fearing what we don't understand." His words echoed in the chamber. The fear of the unknown had governed their responses for so long. Now they were beginning to see that the humans were not like the other races. They were not here for power, for wealth, or for territory. They were here for something far more fundamental. They wanted to exist, to be a part of the galaxy once again. The Zilari leader, known for her strategic brilliance, finally spoke. I agree. But if we reach out to them, if we acknowledge them, what does it mean for us? For the galaxy? Will we be opening the door to a new era, or will we be inviting chaos? What does it mean to recognize a people who were once forgotten? The room was silent again, as each leader considered the weight of the question. No one could deny that humanity had been forgotten, lost to time, and to the larger forces of the galaxy. But now, as the human ships remained unmoving, there was an undeniable sense that something had shifted. The humans had survived, even in their isolation. They had endured, and now they were asking to be seen. A quiet voice spoke up from the back of the room. It was a young member of the Varn Council, one who had not been part of the debates in the past. He had listened to the stories of Earth, stories passed down from his elders. Perhaps this is not just about recognition, he said slowly, his words carefully chosen. Perhaps it is about us as much as it is about them. Maybe we have to remember who we were before we can understand who we are now. The room fell still as everyone considered this new perspective. The words hung in the air, like a challenge to the assumptions they had all lived with for so long. The humans had returned, not to destroy, but to remind the galaxy of something lost. And in that reminder, there was an opportunity for something greater. On the human ships, the crew remained patient. They had waited for so long. They had watched, learned, and now they were ready. It had been a long journey, not just through space, but through history. They had come to terms with the idea that humanity had been forgotten, that their place in the stars had been erased from memory. But they had never stopped believing that they belonged here. They had never stopped fighting for their place. The message they had sent was clear, and now they waited for the galaxy to respond. The humans didn't need to dominate. They didn't need to rule. All they wanted was to exist, to be a part of the story once again. They had no desire to control or subjugate. They had learned that true strength came not from power, but from endurance, from surviving when no one thought they could. One of the crew members, a woman who had grown up hearing the stories of Earth's rise and fall, sat quietly at her station, looking out into the void. She had always wondered why Earth had been left behind, why humanity had been cast aside. But now she understood. The humans had survived because they had never given up. They had never accepted the notion that they were powerless. She turned to her console, pressing a few keys. A message appeared on the screen, and her heart skipped a beat. It was from the council. The leaders were ready to meet. Her fingers hovered over the screen. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. The moment when the galaxy would have to choose, to embrace humanity or to let them remain on the edges of existence, forgotten once again. With a deep breath, she hit send. In the council chambers, the leaders looked at the message that appeared before them. It was simple, direct, and yet it carried more weight than any fleet could. The humans were ready. They had shown their hand, not with force, but with clarity. The room was silent as the leaders read the message. The Zilari leader spoke first. They have done what we could not. They have shown us their purpose. They are not here for war. They are here for recognition. They have waited for us to see them. The Drakari general nodded solemnly. And now it is time for us to decide. Do we ignore them again, or do we finally acknowledge what they have always known? The council was silent, and for the first time in a long while, the weight of the decision felt clear. This was not about power. This was about something much more fundamental: respect. As the message ended, the leaders looked around the room. They knew the galaxy would never be the same.